I have with me this afternoon John White, who is the State Superintendent of Education for the state of Louisiana. He was the Deputy Chancellor for the New York City school system, so he's had a lot of experience with a broad range of organizations and positions in education, and currently he's the chair of the Chiefs for Change, an organization of state chief officers who are committed to reform in American education. And I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to talk with him today about the amazing developments that have been occurring in Louisiana. Louisiana has always been a low-performing state, but in recent years, under John White's leadership, this state has made more progress than any other state in the United States, according to the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And it all starts, perhaps, with Katrina, the great hurricane in New Orleans, because that washed away the pre-existing school system. So John, that's what I'd like to really ask you about. How did it happen that a new school system was built out of, shall I say, the ashes of, or at least the mud and the sludge of the Katrina storm?
And that great tragedy. Of course, we call it a man-made tragedy in New Orleans. But prior to Katrina, New Orleans, by any measure, was the lowest performing urban school system in the country. It was the second lowest performing school system and the second lowest performing state in America. When you have to vacate your entire city for weeks and months and sometimes even years for many of our people, you have no students. When you have no students, you have no revenue for a school board. And when that happened, the school board in New Orleans in 2005 tragically severed its contract with its teachers. And the state stepped in and said, well, we will then take over the governance of every school in New Orleans which is struggling academically, and that was nearly 90% of the schools. Over time, the state transitioned those schools from being run by the state to being operated by independent charter school organizations. That took many, many years, but it took a decade, and now we are where we are with a system that is almost exclusively independent charter schools.
Well, actually, you had a little help, I think. That's what I've heard, and maybe you could tell me, were there some outside resources that became available simply because the tragedy captured national attention?
Yeah,
Did
no
foundations
question.
come in?
No question. I mean, New Orleans is a city that is at the heart of the American identity. It's a city that whenever you mention, people have smiles across their faces, and it's also a city of great poverty. And philanthropic interests know that from across the country as well as from within Louisiana. Also, people in a range of issues, from blight and urban development issues all the way to education and health issues, came to Louisiana. I count myself as one of them, to help with what I think of as a reformation, but not just of a school system since a storm, really of tragedies that have befallen low-income people in Louisiana and in the South for centuries. And that's what our project is about, but no question about it. Both people from the inside and people from the outside were part of this.
And some young people came too, didn't they? Didn't young teachers from around the country feel it was sort of their moral obligation to go to New Orleans and help out during this time of stress?
Yeah, I think there was a missionary feel to it. Certainly, I view it as a moral calling. At the same time, it also gave rise to a whole generation of New Orleanians who had, as is the case in New York or anywhere else, existed within a school board establishment that's very hard to be creative within and very hard to be upwardly mobile in. So there are a lot of veteran New Orleans educators who are now able to run schools that they always wanted to run, and they're able to do it in a charter school system where they work for a volunteer board rather than for an elected board and superintendent.
So this released a lot of internal energy as well as bringing in external energy.
Yeah, no question about it. And over the last 10 years, we've been finding our way to how do you give life to local voices, how do you recruit the right outside voices, and how, when you recruit outside voices, do you make sure that the things that are important to us in New Orleans, music, for example, and the arts, incredibly important to the identity of people in New Orleans and to their upbringings. How do you make sure that you never lose those things, even when you have outside talent?
And the federal government helped with some building of schools. Was that part of the assets that you were able to work with?
It doesn't hurt. Every child now is in a renovated or a fully reconstructed building. You know, some amazing buildings. The school where Ruby Bridges went to school in New Orleans, we have totally rebuilt, preserved the facade, and preserved her classroom. You know, it's amazing the resources that came into New Orleans after that great tragedy. And of course, those are opportunities for the next generation of kids as much as they were tragedies for many of the kids who were there. We also benefited from an investment in innovation that the federal government, the Obama administration, rather than the Bush administration in this case, made to grow high-performing charter organizations. And you know, so we've done some good things. We've certainly had a lot of help along the way. It's not resources that every city has at their disposal, but it's also fair to say that the principles of it, independent schools, recruiting talent, those are things that anybody can do.
Well, is there any good evidence that all of this has paid off, that students are actually learning more today than they had been in the days before all of this renovation took place?
One of the things we're also blessed with is it wasn't just educators, but it was political scientists and economists who came to Louisiana. They wanted to study this stuff too. In fact, Tulane has started a center run by an economist named Doug Harris. And economists got together and studied the effects in multiple ways of what's happened in Louisiana and in New Orleans specifically, and have concluded that statistically, no school system that those researchers are aware of has demonstrated the effect on student achievement in such a short period of time than have New Orleans schools. I do want to be clear though, we have a long, long way to go. You know, New Orleans has gone from the bottom of the state in Louisiana to around the median in the state in Louisiana, which given its poverty rate and other things is an incredible thing. But it's not nearly at the top of our state, and our state still performs relatively low in the national ranking. So we have a long, long way to go.
Well, Louisiana has also enacted a school voucher program. So it's a statewide school voucher program. I think it has its component in New Orleans, but elsewhere throughout the state.
Yeah.
How has that worked out?
Well, it's shown a lot of good, positive effects. It's shown positive effects in terms of greater integration of schools. It's shown positive effects in terms of parent approval. It's begun to show positive effects in initial research in terms of the effect of having greater levels of competition. So kids in other schools in proximity to the voucher schools are doing well. And we'll have research coming out soon that I think will demonstrate that the voucher schools right now are performing on a par with schools in the rest of the system. That said, you know, for me, it's not about whether it's a private school, a charter school, or a traditional public school. It's just, is it a good school? My view is we should measure them all, give parents access to all of them, and that the system will be better for parents having that choice, provided that we can validate that there's good work going on in those schools.
Well, the overall system in Louisiana is moving forward. What do you attribute that to?
It's a simple formula. You know, this stuff is not rocket science, but it's actually having access to early childhood education. It's having benchmarked standards and assessments and curriculum matters, I have to say that. It's having prepared teachers who are prepared in the classroom, not in the ivory tower, a pathway to prosperity for every graduate, and revitalizing our career and technical education system. And then finally, not being afraid to intervene. You know, when things are really going off the rails, and typically in our country that affects low-income kids of color, you can't be afraid to intervene. And so we're looking at Baton Rouge and doing work in Shreveport and other cities where there are high concentrations of struggling schools in low-income neighborhoods. That's not something that we can tolerate, and you have to be willing to do something about it.
So you're the head of Chiefs for Change, which is trying to introduce reforms throughout the country, working together with other people who are, like you, the head of the educational system in that state. Yeah. So how can you export what you're learning in Louisiana? How does it work when you are working with an organization like that?
Well, Chiefs for Change is a group of, there's a handful of us who are state chiefs, Mississippi, New Mexico, Nevada, Massachusetts, the Washington, D.C. state superintendent. So we've got a good mix of state chiefs. We've also got district chiefs. And you know, in our system, the fragmented American education system, you have to have both on board. You can't have the state and the district working consistently at odds with one another. And so we have huge district superintendents that are doing amazing things from California all the way to Florida in our group too. And you know, we have formed working groups to take on what we think are the greatest challenges coming up. One of them is how should schools be governed in times when the current governing structure is not working? What should be done? And I think that's an incredibly powerful question given everything that we've tried that's worked based on research over the last 10 years under No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top. But also there's a lot that hasn't worked, and there's a lot of wasted money and wasted activity. And so that's one example of how we can work together to say this is what we're committed to doing together.
Well, so let me be specific about that. How about the New Orleans model, where every school is a school of choice? Is that something that should be put into place in other big cities around the country?
Yeah, and we're experiencing this, of course, in Massachusetts as we have this dialogue that there is a referendum on the ballot regarding are charter schools a good thing? And the research in Massachusetts would demonstrate without question that they are. In Louisiana, it would demonstrate without question that there are. And there are other places, though, where charter schools have really struggled. So it's not just is an all charter school system a good thing. I mean, let's be honest. Look at Detroit. It's not working at the scale that it needs to work at the quality it needs to work at. So can it be done well? Yes, if there's a plan to have talent, to have accountability, to have the right governance model, to offer options to families, and to intervene when schools don't do well. You know, if you have those things in place, it can work. And there's research now in Massachusetts, in Louisiana, and elsewhere to demonstrate that it can work. But it's not just charter schools. It's having a plan for who runs them and what to do when they don't work.
No magic bullet is going to solve the problem of American education.
No question.
John, this has been a great opportunity for me to discuss our schools and where we need to go. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Fun for me as well. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.